So as it happens though, one of the first night where I'm like, right, brilliant. Gotta have some fun, enjoy the kind of times while we're young, being students and stuff like that. I went off with some of my mates, and then people I'd just met as well. And then my flatmate Rio, who we'll talk about him later because he's obviously a part of the campaign, was stuck back at home because he can't stand it. So he just he wasn't even gonna try. But usually, it goes all right. But maybe because I took such a bit of a break beforehand, maybe I was a bit more attuned to certain things. We talk about the culture and the problems with all the sexual assault and stuff like that. When before, I mean, I just don't experience it myself and stuff like that. So it's a lot easier as a guy to just kind of like not even consciously tune off, but just not even notice it. So maybe in some ways it was that break that I wasn't used to that. And taking a step back kind of lets you see what you believe in yourself, and all that, and makes you maybe a bit more aware. Basically, it all just kind of it was just kind of queuing up for Guy's Bar and saw this incident with someone who might have been spiked, two guys dragging her out, and it just looked dodgy. We don't know. I mean, they might have, been friends and stuff like that, but it just felt to me that with all this news about the spiking and all these rumors going around, and Guy's Bar is pretty notorious at that point, why there was no simple check or anything like that, because we know how serious the relationship between spiking and rape can be. Like this is like some of the highest crimes possible, and
exactly.
that just kind of, I would have thought that there'd be something would be happening surely. Everybody's talking about the spiking thing. It's out in the open. You had these DC bars getting shut down, and KCLSU have had multiple reported cases. Even though barely anyone reports it, they still have had some reports, so they know that it's happening at Guy's Bar, right? Yeah, it was up to me and members of the public just outside. Anyone could see that. I mean, the whole queue. I mean, you could especially. I mean, you could hear a lot. Like the guys, obviously, a lot of the guys didn't notice it. Even some were just saying, "Yeah, you're gonna have to get ready for that. You're gonna see a lot of weird stuff like that tonight," which was pretty repulsive. But it was up to us to just kind of, what is going on here. In the end, she was taken just to the hospital around the corner from Guy's Bar, because something was just not right, that someone who's spiked, can't even stand up, is literally getting dragged around, can just kind of be taken away. And I thought it was dodgy. I stayed in there to check up on my friend because I was worried about her. And it gets you, once you see that and you can just see that there's kind of like no safeguards here whatsoever, it gets you a bit concerned, because if one person's been spiked, that means there's a spiker, or there's an offender actually at that event, which is even more worrying. So I checked up on her, and then I left, and then got back to Rio, and he just kind of clocked onto it immediately. And we both like agreed that something's got to give here. But we were just talking about what are some basic things we can do here. So there are some safeguards, and that's when we came up with like the kind of log out form process and stuff like that, that's like one of the policies, and we got thinking about it. And then there was a whole process of, I mean, my friend Rio, who can be a bit radical, and he did it was interesting how we kind of, got to the idea. He did the whole, right, I'm not going to lie, case of spiking, shut down the whole thing. Just to do something, almost take a sledgehammer to it. And then started thinking about that. Yeah, we can't really, would we be able to push for that? And then we got the whole idea of a pause, basically. Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, that was kind of, and we almost came about it on the night. Same with the slogan as well. But the basic idea is, once you've got a case of spiking, confirmed, likely case of spiking, stop the music, turn on the lights, make an announcement, informing attendees basically that there's been a likely case of spiking, so they can take their own precautions. At the end of the day, I think it's just a basic right that people should be able to know that. It shouldn't be hidden. If you've got someone that's just been spiked at that event, as I said before, there's going to be an offender there who's doing it. But obviously before that, we can get to all that. Staff would be informed before the announcement. And there's a whole process that we've outlined that needs to take place before the announcement. So it's not just chaos. And then once that announcement's been made, people have a chance to check up on their friends. securities with the lights on, they can see. And now CCTV footage is also able to work during that time frame, where it isn't before because everything's dark and you can't see a thing. During that time you can see, and it's also a big deterrent for offenders. With this policy, and it's something that nightclubs probably aren't going to volunteer to do, and there's a reason for that, because when they have to do this policy, then it's out in the open. And if they've got a lot of people, if their event is used for spikers to spike people, which Guy's Bar is, then everyone's going to know about it. And it's also going to disrupt the event itself, which is really bad for them. So once they have to do that one policy, they'll take it upon themselves to do everything else and all these other measures, because it's then in their interest to stop the spiking. Because if you're lax on everything else, you're lax on checks and all that, and with this policy, you're in a lot of danger, more danger, I guess, that one spiking incident becomes much of a bigger problem. It's not just, well, in terms of how they see it, it's not just, the victim's welfare, it's their entire kind of club night and reputation that's on the line. But we also kind of decide on the night as well that, like, we want to do something about this, but we just don't have the knowledge. Yeah. It was just a gut feeling that we should just go to them, and they'll be able to kind of almost, lead this basically. Because we want to help and stuff like that, and we're committed to that, but we don't have the knowledge or experience to do that properly, because these are very sensitive issues, and it's very important to be informed as much as possible. And obviously Sude's probably talked to you about all the culture and everything there, which is critical, and that's just something that me and Rio just won't really understand that much. And yeah, the Intersectional Feminist Society was hot on this. They got back. In their words, they said, once you've got straight white guys emailing you that there's a spiking and a harassment problem at nightclubs, it must have gotten really bad. So I think that's what they said. But they were, and then they just kind of supported it all the way. Well, personally, I found out more after the campaign. I just went with the ones I knew of the Intersectional Feminist Society beforehand. So that's just why I reached out to them. It was just a gut feeling, and instincts just said, go to them. I didn't actually know about the other societies. As soon as I messaged the Intersectional Feminist Society and we got talking, then I found out, because they partnered with It Happens Here, Sexpression, and a few other societies with a previous campaign against spiking during the December term, when it was all over headlines and stuff, more over headlines in newspapers, and it went all the way to the King's College Council, the highest decision-making body. But we've met the persons from It Happens Here, and they're very eager to really work with us and stuff like that. So that was purely just on my part, not knowing about the other societies. I hadn't spent much time with societies anyway. So obviously it's hugely important, not just on the awareness level, which is basic, but in terms of the success of a campaign. If you've not got anyone following you and backing you, you're not really going to do much. But I think one thing that we could change with that is, what they did really well was all the online presence and stuff like that. The use of social media, because that does get the word out really quick. I think there's something also important about action on the in-person level, purely because it can demonstrate that you are on the ground active on this issue. Social media is great for spreading the awareness, and it does that really well, which is really important. Maybe even that's the first thing you want to do. Just to demonstrate that you're a campaign that is pushing things in person on the ground. You'll probably get more of a following doing that, because people actually see action, and then they're going to support that. I wouldn't say it's influenced it too much. We came up with our policy agenda, a lot of it, before we did more of the national research, just because a lot of our policy agenda, and we will say this in the document, is very specific to Guy's Bar in terms of all the other measures we have, stuff with security guards and stuff, just because we know from stakeouts that these are problems at Guy's Bar, and other nightclubs will have different situations. We still do think, though, that the Stop the Music policy can be, has the potential to be implemented on all of them. But it's just our experience was specific to Guy's Bar, but we've then been branching out with more research and stuff on the national issue. And that's been very useful in terms of confirming a lot of stuff that we kind of already think, because that's the reality with this problem. I think unfortunately, not a lot of these statistics come as a surprise. Some of them came as a surprise to me, but to my friends in the Intersectional Feminist Society, like, it was not a surprise at all, which is really shocking. But in terms of knowing that there's organizations all over the country and campaigns as well that we want to reach out to, even like the Mayor of Manchester has been piloting these new schemes where they've got first aid professionals in spiking hotspots, and they've been doing all sorts. So there's action is happening all over the country right now. So the good thing about this and doing this research is that we do have more avenues in terms of spreading the word and partnerships as well, that we're going to look at. But we did feel like it would be a bit ambitious, but we did feel like we could go for making a policy change at the KCLSU. Yeah, mainly with student backing. But I guess we thought earlier on that it would be easier than it would be, just because of a lot of the resistance at the KCLSU. I mean, we thought that there'd be a lot more democratic avenues, basically. But you also have a situation at the KCLSU where literally you could have a referendum put up on a policy. Every single student at KCL, every single student could vote for it, and it would just be advisory, which I just thought was a bit weird. So yeah, we were hoping for something a bit more like that, but there's still avenues out there, and there's still a lot of stuff that we're pursuing. Yeah. So yeah, it's a big job, but we feel like we can do it, and we're all committed to it. I guess I feel like when it comes to interacting with students and everything like that, Instagram is probably the easiest one. All the societies are on there pretty much. And, you know, most people have accounts and stuff like that. And that's just quite easy, instead of like more formal emails and stuff like that. But obviously we've got an email, the Instagram. Also, we'll be around on the opening fair. That'll be important for us in terms of meeting other societies. And the endorsements and stuff for the policy from societies and stuff like that, and setting up hotlines with each society. That's what we'll try to do, but we'll mainly set those up through Instagram because it's just really accessible. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it does come down to integrity, acting on your compassion as well. And, you know, it's a cliche, but just when you feel like you just have to do the right thing in these cases. But, you know, integrity is a huge thing because it's not easy, because it does require standing out from the crowd a little bit. And you kind of have to be willing to do that. But as long as, for me personally, as long as you're actually driven by, a decent motivation, it's like, oh my God, this person needs help, and thinking what could be going on here and the severity of how bad this is, that doesn't really factor in. As long as you keep that as your core, you're not really factoring, oh, what's everyone going to think of me if I jump up the queue right now, or how am I even going to get back in the queue? Like that just becomes a no factor kind of issue, when someone could literally have just been spiked and then been taken away to be sexually assaulted. It just doesn't factor in that much. For me personally, in that incidence, there's elements of that when it will be hard when it's with your friends and someone you really like or something like that, and you kind of, you know, you expect better from them, and you see that, and that is hard because they're your friends, right? Yeah. But you kind of just have to, as I said, you kind of have to have that integrity to call it out. And it's tricky because you might end up having to cut off some of your friends, basically. Because by being there, and, you know, people don't change very, very easily all the time. And sometimes it will require just not hanging around with certain people, telling them why you're not doing that and being open to them about it. So we want our Stop the Music policy to be implemented at the KCLSU. That was our plan last year. It was almost our gut feeling that the KCLSU is just so bureaucratic. They've mismanaged this issue for months when it should have been like a massive priority of student safety to be proactive on this. And the fact that in February, I'm going to Guy's Bar and I'm seeing absolutely no safeguards whatsoever. So on that night, I was pretty agreed that we can't really, there's nothing we can do with the KCLSU here, the way they've handled this. At the same time, we thought we saw a chance of an opening, and we made the decision, while we do more research, get to grips more with the problem, and the team gets to know each other better, and to have that trust, which is it's so necessary to have that trust when it comes to a team. But we want to see this year, so we spent a lot of time in meetings with the KCLSU, trying to be as cooperative as possible. We compromised on so many different things, especially with timing and all that, until we just made the decision that our goals are completely unaligned. Our priority is student safety and a zero tolerance approach to spiking and sexual assault, and theirs isn't. And that we couldn't compromise on that. At the end of the day, whoever you're working with, you both need to be in agreement that this is serious and requires action. That wasn't really the case with the KCLSU. I mean, they will respond to you and stuff like that if you go out to comment with this massive list of stuff. But we've literally, I can show you the exchanges we had when in meetings we took them through step by step. These are all the reasons why this is just completely flawed. And at the end of the day, it came down to one basic thing, that they've got these wonderful sounding training schemes, and they even say these searches going on at the door, but they don't go to the nightclubs. They don't actually go there. They're in offices. We actually go to the nightclubs, and we the amount of times we told them week after week, this doesn't happen. What's happening on paper, surprise, surprise, from the KCLSU offices, what you believe is happening on paper, you got to just go to the club and see it for yourself, because it's obvious. It's pretty insufficient. I mean, even with the Stop the Music policy, for example, just to demonstrate some evidence of why I think we're unaligned, like they never actually gave us a substantiated reason why they didn't want to implement it. I think the most consistent one was crowd control, and another one in terms of it will block any window of gathering evidence, but it just doesn't, that's just not a coherent argument at all. You can read our policy document, and surely you're out of control of a crowd when you've got people in the crowd spiking everybody. Like that is an issue of crowd control. It wasn't being taken seriously. And another demonstration, they're making the monetary argument that what if we don't have the money to hire first aid professionals, but they've just splashed out on this massive refurbishment, and they haven't included any safety measures and stuff like that. So I think it just kind of, and we just got that sense that we're wasting our time here. We don't have all the time in the world. We don't have time to be going in meeting after meeting after meeting, repeating ourselves and feeling like we're just not getting listened to, and then be reaching out to the student community and stuff. So that's why we've done, it's quite a limited amount of reaching out. I mean, we obviously did our endorsement form that got 88 signatures from different societies, but we could have done so much more than that. That literally, it didn't take us that long to be sending out that information, because students are proactive on this. They know it's a problem, and they were really great at getting back to us and signing those forms, and the enthusiasm they showed there. So we had to make that pretty tough decision that we can't spend all our time working with the KCLSU. It's not that we're going to completely shut a door to them. Of course, we're always going to leave the door open, because at the end of the day, it's the KCLSU that we want to implement these policies. But there's other means of us getting them implemented, and increasing the pressure on that, because we just can't accept this status quo. It all comes down to what our priorities are.